Thanks, Dory. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Just as a reminder, my name is Ashley Schofield, and I am one of the new co-chairs for this subcommittee, as well as Noelle Cuthair. It's on here. Hi. So we'll start off as usual. We'll go around and check
Recording in progress.
What PCCEP members, Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, also known as PCCEP. I've already checked in. I use she, her pronouns. Noelle, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I'm Noelle Cuthair. I'm the newer co-chair, as well as a newer member of PCCEP. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you all for being here with us tonight.
Before the rest of the committee members chime in, I'm just going to add just a little facilitator flair. If you can just say, what's the energy? If you can name name the energy you're coming into this meeting with. And then we'll just do that for the members. Ashley, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and start that. Thanks. That's a great idea. Really excited to start the night as sort of back to this role as co-chair in this space. So excited. Just kind of it's excited. I love the newness. So Noelle, what about you?
I'm feeling pretty optimistic as well as open. So yeah, I would say that open ears, listening and here.
Great. Invite other PCCEP members to step up and introduce themselves and give their
I'll
word.
go next.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Driver. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a member of this committee. And I guess my one word for tonight is curious.
Tia?
My name is Tia Palafox. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the co-chair of the Policy and Reform Subcommittee. And I'm sorry, I'm bringing in sleepiness. But I'm also curious and happy to be here, but I'm a little tired. Thank you.
Sandra. I'm just seeing who's in PCCEP members on my stream, but if you want to just pop in, but I see Viva's or Devontae, I saw you go on mute. There you go.
Devontae Manyweather, PCCEP full committee co-chair. I guess I'm coming with a pretty calm energy today. I'm happy to be here and thank everyone for coming. And I can pass it off to if Viva is going to go next.
Sure. Hi, Viva Campo, she, her pronouns, member of this subcommittee. I'm trying to think, there's things I'm trying not to bring in here, but so I'm trying to be genuine versus my intent is to be present and open.
I can go next. My name is Odelia Zuckerman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the co-chair of the full committee with Devontae. I'm feeling invigorated. Yeah, and I'll pass it to Leslie.
Hey everyone, my name is Leslie Martinez. My pronouns are she, hers. And I think the energy, unfortunately, that I'm bringing to the space tonight is a little under the weather. I'm not feeling the best, but I do want to be here. So I'm trying to practice resilience and be present. Who else do we have?
Might be it. So yeah, if we want to have folks from the city, PBB, Independent Monitor, if you want to introduce yourself either live or chat.
Greetings all, Antoinette Edwards, a member of the Independent Monitoring Team. Good to be here with you.
Good evening, Mary Claire Buckley from the Portland Police Bureau. Pleased to be here, and my word to be here to listen.
Thank you.
Hi, all. Assistant Chief Chuck Lavelle, Portland Police Bureau.
Thanks for being here.
I am Sarah Ames, she, her pronouns, Deputy City Attorney.
I'm Dory Gravinsky, PSUB Program Manager.
Good. We got a good group tonight. Those in the community, please, if you mind introducing yourself, if you'd like, in the chat, that would be lovely. Okay, well, we'll move on to our community agreements that we like to set. Anybody want to read these off? I'd love somebody else from the another member to read these off for me.
I'll go ahead.
Thanks.
So community agreements, listen actively and respectfully, share airtime, be present and open to new information and perspectives, assume positive intent, respect each other, respect the group, speak your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, ask questions to clarify, call out bias, and be okay with ambiguity.
Awesome. Thanks, Noelle. Well, great. We have a good meeting, inaugural first meeting of this iteration of this community engagement subcommittee. So tonight's agenda, we have a couple updates we'd like to share. And then we're going to move into sort of a discussion similar to maybe what happened last week with policy and reform around just what this subcommittee's core tasks are, and what we want to sort of move forward with. So very exciting. And then, yeah, our goal, I think, is to move the conversation into really what can this subcommittee be doing? Like, what are some tasks? I think we're wrapping it up into some event brainstorming, but just kind of like how do we take whatever we think our intent of the subcommittee is and moving it into actual action. And then, yeah, we would hopefully we'll leave enough time, or we will leave enough time, but hopefully you could leave some extra time for public comment on our updates and all the brainstorming we did. So yeah, updates, we'll move along. I know this was shared in last week's meeting as well, but the Community Board for Police Accountability has open applications right now. Thank you, Dory. So just, a general announcement again to let you all know that this is out there. If you have any anybody who might want to join this, please, or apply, please send them along the application link. And again, this board is a governing board, so not similar to ours, to PCCEP or other advisory boards. This definitely has more influence in addressing concerns and needs for policing decisions. So big role. So anybody who's up for it, we are thankful for you. Yeah, announcement about an upcoming PCCEP sponsored event as part of our amici training with the Mental Health Association, MHA. We are going to be showing a film screening of Alien Boy, The Life and Death of James Chassie. Some of you may be familiar with this story. I am familiar with it for this exact training a couple years ago. It's a pretty impactful, pretty heavy movie and story, and I think it's one that's very important, and I'm really glad that we're doing that. So that's on April 7th at the Clinton Theater. Yeah, there's the QR code there. If you click on that, you can RSVP to the event. It is free and it's open, but we do need you to register. Yep, that's 7 to 9. And then another update we wanted to bring up forward, since we're going to be talking about it more in our next full PCCEP committee meeting, is just some news, some things we've heard in the media and in the news on accounts from leaders and council members in the community. yeah, around just how PPB officers are showing up at community engagement events, particularly two new city council members, Councilor Canal and Councilor Morello. And yeah, I think there's just been some concerns and some sort of, I think there's been some conversations going on around, just kind of the intent and feeling of how those officers have been showing up to those particular events. And we want to dig into that a little bit more. And I think, where this relates to PCEP, it just, this definitely is tied to our job to connect community and the PBB and the city around these concerns around how policing happens. And so particularly how, what does community engagement look like with PBB and the community? So I think this opens up a really good conversation. So I'm really excited to found out today that that Adelia and Devante as co-chairs have invited PBB leadership to our full committee meeting on March 26th to bring up questions and really talk about what was the approach around that kind of and how that all played out, I guess. Because I think, we've talked about this before around other topics around just what the media takes and what we hear. And I think we really, here in PCEP, really pride ourselves on having this be a space of transparency and trust and healthy discord. And so, just really excited that PPB's leadership is going to come be here and we can ask questions and we can, make sure that we're understanding what happened so that we can address community concerns that we've heard. I can open up to any questions from PCEP members at this moment if you have any thoughts or questions around these updates.
Maybe if we just share a little bit of the background, Ashley, if I may just summarize.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're specifically talking about the town hall that Councilor Canal did on March 2nd, which was following his statement of a resolution during the the Community and Public Safety Committee, which had issues or concerns or questions about the use of bias in the qualifying job description for the community board, the Police Accountability Board. And then because both Councilor Canal and Councilor Morello were participating in the Community and Public Safety Committee conversation, the following events that they did had what seemed to be a more police presence than was previously existing. So that's I think where, just to explain where Ashley was talking about why we're concerned. So yeah, I think we just have questions in our role of soliciting and exchanging information. Maybe March 6th is when we hear most of the conversation, but it would be great between now and then to hear from the community, your questions. I don't want to speak for all of PCEP, but we're curious, like, are police attending in uniforms and marked cars to all of these events? Is the role community engagement? Some questions about how that plays into their long-term picture, especially as we as PCEP move forward to build our relationships with the counselors and work on the district level participation that we're hoping to do. So just wanted to chime in there so that the details were clear if anybody missed all the news this week.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. That was really helpful. Yep. Tia, your hand up. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was just wondering, Odelia and Devante, if I could ask who the PPB leadership was, because I think I let you know that Captain David Abrahamson was hoping to come to a PCEP meeting to discuss their community engagement plan with us.
Yeah, so this was going to be separate from that, more to focus on like the specific concerns and like questions about folks or about PPB attending certain counselors' events and like what that relationship looks like. So this would be totally separate from that. And I don't think Dory might have an answer to the other part of your question.
Yes, Odelia and Devonte as chairs brought this request forward, and then I worked with my colleagues to identify some folks who I ended up sending the invitation to on their behalf. So that ended up being Assistant Chief Lavelle, Assistant Chief sorry, I'm forgetting his name. Chris
Jovic.
Jovic. Yes, I always forget the first letter. And Chief Day. But I was gonna say, since Assistant Chief Lavelle is here with us, I think PCCEP would also be open to other guests who you think might be able to speak to, who PPB thinks might be able to speak to some of the questions being raised. So whatever insight you all have as far as who might be able to answer some of their questions.
Yeah, and I don't know who's going to be attending from PPB specifically, but we will have someone there on the 26th to talk more in depth about it. And tonight, I'm happy to take back any concerns from the group or the community in preparation for that meeting on the 26th. But I will say, in short, the chief's goal, one of his goals, stated goals, is transforming the dynamic between police and community. And he really wants officers, command people from precincts to be out in community, doing engagement. The goal is not to intimidate folks or make people feel uncomfortable or anything like that. It's really just the opportunity to engage with community. A lot of the discussions happening have a public safety nexus as well. And so we just want to kind of be in that space to have those discussions. But I think going forward too, we're more than happy to work with council to figure out kind of what that needs to look like going forward.
Thank you, Chief LaBelle. Carrie,
Sure.
or did you have me? Yeah, go ahead. Over to
You're muted, Carrie.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to mention that PCCEP has been following the issue of the bias qualifier in the accountability board for a long time. And in fact, Olivia and another colleague, Jorge, provided testimony at the fairness hearing to Judge Simon on August 29th, exactly to this point. So it's relevant to us in terms of the current change of patterns, but also the topic itself is also important to us.
Thanks, Carrie. Adelia.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Carrie. Yeah, I think everything feels like super connected and feels like there's a lot happening in the PPB sphere that is related to the work we're doing. But yeah, I think Jake put it in the chat, but one thing I think that for me caused some areas for concern was that Counselor Murillo did ask why certain officers were at this event, and they said they were sent by their lieutenant, but wouldn't share the lieutenant's name with Counselor Murillo. And that feels and I posted a link on to Counselor Murillo's Instagram where she was kind of talking about this a little bit from her experience and perspective. But yeah, I guess as much as I've been around in this scene, I feel like PPB community engagement has looked very different from what we saw over the past few weeks. And so that's kind of why it raises a few things for me, because usually it looks like someone come in chatting, talking, trying to meet with members, but there wasn't a lot of conversation from what I've heard. It was just officers in the back or doing their thing, not talking. And so that's kind of where questions come up for me. And then why specifically these two counselors and not others, which I think other people have said too, but hopefully that just provides some insight into the conversation we can have with whoever is coming to the full committee meeting. I hope we can kind of discuss these things further. That would be great. Yeah.
Thanks, Delia. Yep, good points. Leslie?
Yeah, hello. So apologies in advance if I'm loopier than usual. But yeah, piggybacking a little bit on what Odelia said, you know, the intent may have been to engage, but the impact was not engagement, and that is not what the community felt. The reports, and there's also a link from the Oregonian. There's also, I think it was the Oregonian did a profile on that, and I'll drop it in the chat if I can find it. So yeah, so while that may have been in the intent, that was not the impact. So I think one of the questions we also want to ask is, you know, why do community members feel that way? What can be done differently if the intent really is to engage the community, to make them feel welcome? We know that there's going to be people. I think one of the things that I read is that, you know, they showed up in full uniform. There's people that are going to be, you know, comfortable with that. There's people that are going to be triggered by that. Chief Day, even when we've seen him talk, has talked a lot about how when he engages with community, he engages in his plainclothes, right? So that's another thing too, because, you know, it creates an element of that. So there were, I think at Councilor Murillo, there were 5. And also I think one of the questions is like, if they're in full uniform, then they are being paid. And, you know, do we need that level of paid officers at a community event? So that's another question as well. So I just wanted to add that. I know we were spending quite a bit of time on this, but wanted to provide that context as well.
Just before we move on,
Yeah.
because oh, sorry, go ahead.
And I have a little bit on that one, and I think it was there were 2 at Councilor Murillo's, I believe. But the reason they're in uniform is they're working, they're patrol shift. So they're, you know, at a precinct taking calls, doing things, but then being asked to stop in at these different town halls to engage. And I realize the difference between, you know, intent and impact, and we want them engaging, talking to people, giving out business cards if they need to, and especially if it's their district, the areas they work. That's the level of engagement we would want and expect from them too at these events.
Devontae, I see your hand up, and then Barbara, I think you had an account too of that. Perhaps we could squeeze you in if you'd like to share. But Devontae, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, it is concerning, you know, that I guess the impact is different than the intent. I am happy to hear that PPB is taking an interest in showing up at some of these community events. I think that, the first step to fostering trust and to, garnering trust from the community is being in the community, in those public spaces where dialogues can happen, and people can meet, different officers and, meet the people behind, the badge per se. Um, so, maybe the impact wasn't what it should have been. So maybe that's a conversation that can be had about when we show up in these public spaces. We don't want to just sit in the back. We want to be personable. We want to, speak with people and get to know, some of the community members. And so, but I am happy to hear that, there are officers in these public spaces, because I think that that's where, the opportunity, it lies, right? That's where the opportunity is to build trust and to build relationships. So I am happy to hear about that. So, but always room for improvement, I suppose.
Well, we're gonna spend a lot more. We're gonna spend a lot more time next week, I think. Do we want to move on, or Barbara? I just noticed he went off camera, but I wanted to make sure that, like, maybe we can move on. I think there's going to be a lot of conversation around this, at our full PCCEP committee meeting. So that was just more of an update that PCCEP, this is what PCCEP's looking at. We want to move forward with talking about it more. So I'm going to move on if that sounds good to everybody. But those are really great points brought up, questions. Thank you, Chief LaBelle, for taking that back, those concerns and some of those questions. Yeah, so we can have more of a well-rounded conversation altogether. So really appreciate you showing up, and appreciate that we'll have some more time to talk about this. All right. Well, now on to the fun part. Sarcasm. But so thank you all to the public and all the members just for moving through all this process talk lately. As you know, we've sort of, new members and other members, kind of graduating out. There was a time to like look at what we were doing as subcommittees. So we've done a little bit of that over the last month, voted on a new direction, voted on new leadership for each subcommittee and the full committee. So tonight, sort of similar to what happened last week, we're going to spend this time talking about, what is the community engagement subcommittees, general vision, what are our core tasks, what is something that can give some guiding light as we move forward with what we're doing. I think there's not a lot to remake. I think this subcommittee has always had kind of directive around how to make, increase our relationships and with community and with the city and with just, how do we get out into the community more. So tonight we want to talk a little bit about those directions and, move forward to have a plan that we can submit and talk about during the full PCCEP committee on March 26th to get some feedback and approval. And yeah, I think really let's lean in on creating a framework, creating some some sort of guiding light direction, whether that's looking at it as a vision or a mission of this subcommittee. And then, want to propose that we don't hammer in too much about, well, we don't know if this will work. And we know how that conversation can get us. So me and Noelle will kind of be putting some boundaries and parameters around how we move forward with this discussion and have some ideas around what those core tasks could be. So we're excited to share those with you. So that's the goal of this discussion, is to, get a consensus with this subcommittee and then bring it back to our full committee on the 26th. So anybody have any questions about those goals? So yeah, let's get right into the meat of it. Again, I think this subcommittee has always had a good foundation about what, at least I'll say that as in my perspective. I know when I came in and became the subcommittee co-chair of the community engagement subcommittee, it was kind of a new iteration. It was new. It was something newer than what we had before. And I think through that work and working with Tia and all the other members, I think we got good at, listening, like providing space to the community, bringing things kind of to the top, to make sure that the community was aware. And we did that in several ways through town halls, some listening sessions, some learning opportunities with different organizations. So we've generally know what the subcommittee is supposed to be doing, but we want to put a little more structure to it and kind of just really identify some key core tasks that we want to move forward with. So these are what me and Noelle and Dory, with help of Dory, came up with to propose in terms of what this core tasks of the subcommittee should do. So again, that key that's always kind of been in the subcommittee is that relationship building with community partners and members. So yeah, putting a little more definition on that. Priority means centering key communities under the settlement, right? So our mental health advocates and community members and people that have organizations that have maybe shown up for in regards to the settlement. So actually I'm going a little too off track here, but I think we want to be able to sort of put some language around like who are those community partners, because there's a lot, right? There's so many partners in the city. So like who can not matter most. That's not the wording, but it's like what can make sure that we're and I know that T and I, we had this problem a little bit of like, we wanted to talk to everybody.
Hey, Ashley, I
Oh.
think Dory's just trying to grab your attention.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna propose that you and Noel kind of co-lead this slide, and then also that maybe before we get to kind of the unpacking or explaining, like that we do that together as the subcommittee. Because I think that's where we kind of get a little bit lost in just my experience of the last week's discussion about this, and some of the process discussions. So my proposal would be to just look at what's on the slide and then honestly maybe even just open it up for discussion.
Yeah.
From the outset. I think that would maybe keep us more dialed in. Sorry to interject.
I appreciate that. So yeah.
Did you want to go ahead, Ashley, and then just read the slide and we'll go through it, I guess?
Yeah. So identifying, building relationship with community partners, relationship building with the council and the mayor. We've talked about this before. This is a priority of mine, and so working on that. Community engagement events, like that would be the biggest role of this subcommittee, and leaning into how we can plan those out. And then our relationship with the PBB and that community engagement work, which kind of came up already in our updates. And so that's definitely been a core task that we've talked about but haven't really built anything around. So those are my 2 cents. Noelle, did you have any thoughts on this list?
I'm kind of reading through it right now. No, I agree with what you're talking about. So we have community engagement events at least once every 2 months in community spaces. That'll be looking like a town hall listening session, open house, or some type of supporting organization on how we're doing that. Obviously, that'll be public, but I'm thinking that'll definitely be in person. Not sure where that'll be held yet, but we're going to be adaptive to what comes next. Community engagement events that can support and work with the rest of the committee. And then we also have evaluation of BPB's community engagement work. How are they engaging with the community to build trust and transparency? I don't have a lot to add to that currently.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Let's open it up to full PCCEP members, or all the PCCEP members. Yeah, what are your guys' first thoughts on reading this and this sort of being our guiding light for the moment? And thinking about this list in a way that, this can evolve, but yeah.
I think it looks great, and based on my understanding from the meetings that we've had, the retreats and the working sessions and the public meetings, it represents the work well.
I hate to say this, but I'm feeling confused. And I guess I thought we were trying to do a little bit more separation between subcommittees so they wouldn't be working on the same like tasks or like recommendations, if that makes sense. I thought it was going to be more like community oriented stuff because that will be the product of what we're working on. And I think that's a misunderstanding on my end, but I just want to, like, especially picking up an event for policy and reform can take up a lot of time, or like planning that. So, and that could feel like it could then like entangle them more than.
Yeah, what overlap are you seeing? Well, yeah, what overlap are you seeing? Because
yeah, I guess like doing a town hall to gather info for policy and reform, or like, yeah. Does that make sense, or is that? Am I
Well, I
not?
don't think we can completely keep it separate. I mean, I think the work is
Yeah.
also connected that I think it has to be, we have to be, lean into that ambiguity around like,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think what we should talk about tonight is like, how do we stay in our lanes to
Yeah.
do the work efficiently? Like, okay, and something that I brought up when talking about these core tasks is that this is where we connect what we're talking about to the community. These are like the actions we take to be in front of the community to talk about maybe things that have I think like as we have in the slide, like if there's things we're learning from the community that would be useful, and it's not related to policy or settlement that way, right? So because we have all those kind of other tasks that we could do or other topics we could work on. But then, yeah, we would help the policy and reform subcommittee put on a town hall. Like that would, always be a joint effort. So this subcommittee, this community engagement subcommittee, I think is like, I see it as like the doers of that relationship building and getting in front of the community to be that clearinghouse. That
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I think the way I was imagining it prior to like other conversations has been like this subcommittee will work on its own things and policy and reform will work on its own things, and it'll be like two things going at once. Do you still feel like that's here? Yes.
I want to go ahead. I think that's correct, but also there is going to be a little bit of overlap as we kind of work in collaboration and take direction from the full committee.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think, the help of the steering committee, right, and sort of having that direct taekwondo practice is over. That, that we're kind of like in sync, right? Like eventually we'll figure out, okay, this makes sense to plug in at the community engagement subcommittee level. And so I think I don't think we can completely be separate, but I think we can have lanes in terms of like, this discussion happens here, and then maybe this action happens here. And then also I think that relationship building piece, we can't lose it. And that could be, I think I was talking to Dory or Noelle about it, just like that could be like what a full PCEP does. Like, why isn't that their core task for the full committee? But I think it's in this subcommittee is where we make strategies and we make plans to like get out in front of the community or get out in front of these community partners. And we can talk about that in this space and then use the full committee space for maybe that town hall or that invited guests. But yeah, I'll move down the line and see what everybody else is thinking. Tia, are you on mute again?
Man, okay, maybe I should just leave it off. The tasks look really exciting to me, especially the community engagement events. In working with the policy and reform, I've already started making a list of mental health organizations because I really want to be connected to the mental health organizations, and as well as the schools, including the high schools and colleges, has been compiling a list of all the contacts in our area. I also, an interesting take on the last one there is I want to engage with the police as well. Not only like looking in at the police, but engaging with them. So I wanted to mention that as well. So those are the things I'm hoping to work on, and I would love to see under community engagement events, education as in high school and colleges.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, upperclassmen, like the junior and senior leadership classes and affinity groups.
No, always so thankful for what you do out in the community, Tia. I feel like you're a key member of the subcommittee in terms of us like thinking outside our own sort of bubble. So yeah, I think that's like, yeah, so I see that would fall under this. Like, how are we connecting to the youth? Like, how do the youth know about what's going on with policing or the settlement? So that's a blind spot. And I think this subcommittee is that space where we're like focusing on that. We're making those plans and that strategy where, right, like policy and reform would be looking at those directives, like, and they have a set of tasks that are I think, very different than this. From what I saw, I didn't get to attend the meeting last week, but I watched the meeting and heard the conversation. And so I think, and that helped me sort of form like, okay, well, what does this subcommittee actually need to do? And, Noelle and we all talked about it a little bit to bring it to you guys today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to say too, like part of this for us as co-chairs is staying really engaged or up to date with what current events are happening. And, that might look like us going to some of these other committees as needed, as well as like council meetings and that type of thing, just so that way we can actually be there in person and see what's happening. As we all know, being in person's a lot different than on Zoom. It's a little more engaged and you can get an overall general feel of what these events are.
Yeah. And we can like split up that task. Yeah. Carrie.
Thanks. I think the co-chairs, Ashley and Noel, just sort of supported the statement I was going to make, but like Odelia, I agree, and I'm validating how it was a little confusing to me too, because we talked about directive and policy versus non-directive related. But I think that this job description of core tasks still addresses that, because if we are out there having the conversations, we're going to be talking about things outside of policy and directives. But then it's everybody's responsibility on the committee to engage the community, and sometimes we'll be, executing a conversation for a directive or a policy topic. But yeah, we will also have the liberty or the ability to navigate the non-policy and directive topics.
And I feel like that was always a space where we didn't know where to put it. Right. And yeah, because community engagement falls under all the tasks that were, the whole purpose of this committee. But I think this gives us a lane. Like, I think this kind of gives us like, guardrails of like okay, so all this, policy and directives will happen over here. And then and that'll be connected in terms of like what we want to try to get out into the public too, into the community. But then those are relationship buildings and being connected to the community. Yeah. I'll have a home.
We handled like the details.
Yeah, and just I don't know if this was your concern, Odelia, but I know everyone was concerned about having to attend both meetings. So I guess we just need to make sure there's a balance of the community engagement events that we do for non-directive policy things and the ones that we do for the support. Otherwise, it will become difficult to not have to attend all the meetings again.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's scope creep. Yeah. Leslie, have your hand up next.
Yeah, but I think Dory may have been first, or.
Oh, no, I think
okay.
you were.
Cool. Yeah, one thing that I don't see on here, but maybe it's incorporated in a way that is more interconnected. But I would be interested in figuring out what like materials need to be produced to educate the community, whether it be videos or tutorials or like different things like that. I think there's an opportunity to bring education to the community, like, where to look for things, how to submit a report, or, just kind of like different things like that. I know that that's not, that's kind of more, maybe it's not included because it's more adjacent to what we do, but in that element of knowledge and, that being kind of a gateway to make change, I think there's an opportunity to educate the community a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's not like specifically called out in this list, but I think that was certainly talked about when we were talking about what, and just the other conversations we had around this topic and that, you know, that how do we build that clearinghouse? How do we build that process? I think that, you know, I think we could add that under this task, like, you know, educating the public, you know, like, and have its own kind of work group around that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Dory, got your hand up?
I was just going to respond to kind of the main concern raised about this sort of separation piece and the community engagement events that support the work of the rest of the committee and that stand alone. So one thing we'll do in the full committee meeting is circle back on the discussions that were had in policy and reform and this subcommittee and really try to define those lanes. But the reason I put it this way on the slide is because I've just been trying to sort of figure it out in my head where it would be totally separate, and it's very hard to imagine total separation, and I don't know if that is even the right, you know, but that is one of those pieces where I think as you're doing the work, it will maybe make more sense. And what it really might come down to is making sure that there's a clear boundary about the tasks that you're doing. If you think about the like big community engagement events, relative to PCCEP recommendations, you don't have them for every recommendation. It's really only a handful. So it might look like, you know, just supporting a handful, right? Whereas, you know, policy and reform staying in their lane would look like not hosting those events, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, this subcommittee isn't regularly having meetings where you're getting information about, you know, policies at the city or whatever, right? Which is kind of the way it was happening before.
Right.
I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Devontae?
Yeah, I do want to say that I do definitely share Odelia's concern. I think that what this is kind of speaking to is leaning more into a synergy between the two subcommittees. But if that's not closely watched, it becomes bleed over of tasks. And that's what we were trying to get away from before. So I think we have to be especially careful of not falling back into that, because that's the entire reason for the restructuring in the first place. You know, I really did like Leslie's idea, leaning more into, instead of it being gathering information on behalf of policy and reform, um, and that kind of being the focus, leaning into interacting with the community in other ways, such as, you know, educating the community, providing information, advocating for the community, because policy and reform, there very recently we had a meeting with some data analysts from PPB, and so you know, that's policy and reform taking steps to gather information that they need to do their pieces of the work. So all of the engagement with different community partners isn't necessarily going to be done only by this community subcommittee. Policy and reform is going to have to make connections on their own as well, and find those resources that are specifically related to maybe that data analyst or other resources. So yeah, I think focusing that the community, community subcommittee, focusing on a slightly different lens would be beneficial, to where it's not so, the purpose of the community subcommittee is to provide something to the other subcommittee. I would like to see more self-sufficiency in the core functions there.
Yeah, and then just to reiterate what Dory put in the chat, like, yeah, that's what the steering committee will be for, right? To help us with that scope creep and making sure the bigger picture is being considered on the work we're doing. And yeah, like, yeah, I think as co-chairs, that'll be like our role too. I think that's, you know, something that being mindful of the lanes we're crossing and if that crossing that lane makes sense or not, right? Because it might make sense to cross, it might make sense for us, but I think last year I felt like we were really just really trying to like catch up all the time with how to put meetings on the calendar. And so maybe, I feel like so we're already in a good place because I think I think we do have these lanes, but as we work through them, as we do the job, as we do the work, what does it actually look like? And yeah, we all just gotta help each other out. Adelia, you're next.
Yeah, just to add to Leslie's point about like education, I would also love to see more like, I know our updates, I love the updates we do and how we can provide like space for current events, but just like more of that, of keeping the community informed on what's going on now and like what we're seeing and just like making more time for that and perhaps more time for, I think I've said this before, but like the 10 minutes for community feedback when everyone's tired and like wants to log off Zoom, and so how do we like integrate more community voice where it can be integrated? That's something I've been thinking about too, and it's definitely not just a community task. Then I think, yeah, like going back to the conversation about like workload and lanes and all of that, I think it's just really crucial to ask. And I think that we should have this conversation at the full committee meeting about like, what is our capacity as a 13-member group to produce like recommendations? Like, can we realistically work on multiple things at once? And what does that look like? And I think like that's where things got hard over the past year because like, and I definitely contribute to it, like a sense of urgency around recommendations and being like, oh, well, we have this meeting now. So, so just like having those clear boundaries and like capacity stuff. But I do think like going into it with those boundaries in mind is like a lot better than where we started before. So that's all we can really ask for right now.
Right. Like we saw something and we're like, let's change it, and we changed it. So now we have to do it and like just be mindful of that. And going back to your sort of check-in suggestion, I had suggested sort of for some agenda structure for the subcommittee. That this would be a place we could have some standing agenda items. And some of the suggestions I had were, the general updates like we did this in the beginning of the meeting as they come in, and then updates to the community about what PCCEP is talking about, because I think this has been a piece we've talked about in the past of like how do we fill that gap where there's dialogue happening at PCCEP and emails, and it's not anything bad, it's just we're doing the work, right? We're talking to each other, we're hearing things, we're communicating, but then how do we filter that back out into the community so that they know we're talking about it as we're formulating our thoughts and decisions to move forward with recommendation or not. So if we had like that standing agenda item on this subcommittee that could that could center us and around that, like being being available to the community and making sure the community is connected to the work we're doing so that we're not, right, we've done this in the past, we've thought this idea, we moved along with it, but we didn't, and we did some work, and then did we ever check in with the community, did it ever I think we've done a good job of like bringing in community, but I think there's just been some gaps around that internal conversation. So that could be a place to just work that out. And then another agenda item would be relationship updates. So have we met with PBB in the last couple weeks, or, are we talking about it? And, yeah, what are the other some conversations happening? So just that, and that's an update for as members, but also to the community of like just what those conversations are happening and what we're thinking around that, about relationships with the PBB or relationships with the mayor or the counselor, right? Like as we sort of pick up that work, this could be a good place to just sort of say like ground us and do a pulse check around that relationship building. So those are some ideas I had for us to, and yeah, Noelle, I wanted to make sure, I know I sent those along to you, but yeah, your thoughts on, I think everybody's hands are up or have gone up or have been answered.
No, I'll let Devontae go ahead with what he has next.
I think his hand's just been up. I don't think it ever went down. Yeah. Thanks, Devontae.
No, I think you've done a really good job going through this and kind of answering our questions and just keeping, remembering we have to keep an open mind with this, and it'll improve with time as we move further along. But it'll be great to hear from the full committee in our next meeting.
Yeah. So do we feel like Daily, I ask you, but do we feel like as a subcommittee, we could take these core tasks and adding that education for the public maybe as part of our core task list to the full committee and say this is what we want to do? But Odelia, go ahead.
Yeah, to answer that, yes, I like the educating bit. I think like along with the education thing and some of the other things listed, like these things don't really lead to a recommendation necessarily, and that's not their purpose. And I think that's also another thing to like hold on to, because I feel like it felt like, oh, anything that's not a part of a recommendation now, it's like we just don't have time for that. Like sometimes it felt like that for me. And so like thinking about, that's just something to think about, I think, of like the space for non-recommendation related things that are also very important that I think we can do more of, like it's not our only job.
Right.
But yeah.
Right, that like educating piece, that relationship piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I'll move on with that thought. But yeah, I think it's just like taking, picking it like step by step and just like moving forward, because like we're already doing the work and this just gives us a little bit more I think the recommendations, right? Like that piece that I don't ever see that as like our ultimate goal. Like that's a tool we have, but our ultimate goal is to like connect with the community and educate them and be that clearinghouse. So I don't think these were written to sort of say we want to write a recommendation. I think that's like where the full committee comes in and we talk about it there and we work it out there. And then maybe this subcommittee is the one that says, the town hall makes more sense, or so yeah. I think we just have to like move forward and and like think of the ideas and then like say, okay, we have these like boundaries for the subcommittees and really just practice that due diligence together. Devontae.
Yeah, the other thing, before we completely moved on, I wanted to say that I really do like that last one, evaluation of PPB's community engagement work. I wanted to talk about that a little bit more. Um, and what does the evaluation look like when we're asking how is PPB engaging with the community to build trust and transparency? Is there a role that we can play within that by maybe putting forth recommendations about opt to create opportunities and suggest opportunities like coffee with a cop, or runs where officers and participate in like runs or walks that the community can also participate in, like create opportunities for community to come together, that aren't necessarily events surrounding negative happenings, right? Are we able to create opportunities that are maybe centered around positivity, where officers are able to build relationship with community members, and community members can vice versa can build relationships with officers that work in their communities? Coffee with a cop is something that I've heard of, where like a resident or a community member can, go out and have coffee, enjoy coffee with an officer or something like that. That's kind of also what I would like to see the community subcommittee lean into, creating those positive opportunities for interactions. Oh, gotcha.
Oh yeah, we'll move into that. But yeah. Well, that'll be the next part of our meeting. Leslie.
Yeah, maybe this is going to be something that we've discussed, just because, like, in terms of thinking about our tactics, I think Odelia already mentioned, like, one of our tactics is recommendations, but is that always the thing? So I'm wondering, like, if in the case of, like, we want to host a wellness walk with community and first responders or something like that, would that have to be a recommendation, or would that, how, like, would that get to it? Sometimes I get the sense that recommendations feel harsh to the recipient, because they are, like, mandated to respond and, like, things like that. So I do want to just throw that out there in terms of, like, would these ultimately become recommendations, or is there another mechanism or tactic that we would be wanting to lean into to execute these?
I can respond to that. I think the way that this is phrased is trying to give more freedom to having more types of events that aren't tied to that process, which is how we've always thought about it in the past. But I think it would be effective if you had more types of events that weren't so tied to that process. And whether or not this subcommittee is writing any recommendations is something I think you could figure out in the future. Or if you want to think about yourself as a more of a conduit and then be passing off the knowledge you've acquired to other components of the committee, is something that you might figure out as time goes on. I don't think you need to decide. It might just work out a certain way.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. I think, as we kind of define what this committee looks like and does, that's just something I wanted to, like, throw out.
Yeah, go ahead, Frida.
Yeah, and just hearing where the conversation is kind of going, and how folks are wrapping up their perspectives or inputting their last little bits. I'm wondering, is there a general consensus about the core task of this group? Or if there isn't, what would need to change in order to get there?
Thank you. That's a great question. I feel like this is a pretty good start for a good, or a really, a good foundation for a conversation with the full committee. We can learn more there, but yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think we gotta just dive in.
Dive in.
No, I agree. I think this is a great core list. I do like the idea of what we've talked about with, like, adding something about tangibility, like a material or something that we could provide as part of education. That could be an add-on or something that we could present or can be discussed at the full committee meeting. But I really do like our core tasks. It gives us a good bones, I would say, to kind of add on to whatever our work might be.
Well, I would then like to propose we move on to the next agenda item. We're going to
Looks
take a
like
break.
Tia has their hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Tia.
I'm super excited, but before we move on, I wanted to, when we talk about tangible task and the events every 2 months or so and building relationships with the council and the mayor, is that something that we can actually do, like, in a steering committee as far as assigning roles and subcommittees?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah, I think that's exactly the work we would do. Like, we would, and that's, so the next agenda item is to think of these ideas. And so maybe, I think it's think about maybe more events, or but I could also see it as, like, having some time on our agenda to talk about that strategy of, like, how to connect with the council and the mayor's office, or, like, so yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
Are we ready to move on?
move on. So the next slide is going to be a little controversial, I think, because we're also going to suggest that we keep the name Community Engagement Subcommittee. I know there's been a lot of discussion. I missed a little bit of it, so I will acknowledge maybe my flippantness about this, but I wanted to propose that we move forward with not changing the name, only because we haven't really decided on another one. There hasn't been any good ideas about it. So open that up for a little discussion, but wanted to also propose that we move forward without talking too much about it.
I
Yeah.
think that's the point, is we're not discussing it in this
We're not gonna
meeting
discuss it. Okay.
because we don't have alternatives to consider. So you could still decide to change it at any time, but it would not be worth the meeting time of discussing no alternative options. Yeah.
And the way that I've just been thinking about it is I've heard the conversation. I know what we've talked about in the past, but and that community engagement is everywhere. It's in the full committee name. It's everywhere. But at the end of the day, this is the work we are doing. It is that it is the core. It's like we're taking that core task of PCCEP and we're acting on it and we're talking about it and we're doing that part in the subcommittee around how to engage with the community. So yeah, let's keep playing with the name if we need to, but didn't really want to spend too much time tonight because it's just not going anywhere as every time we talk about it. Yeah, and maybe we can do some more voting later on. Definitely open to that, but we wanted to really spend most of our time, the rest of our time together talking, brainstorming for upcoming events. And yeah, this could be the time to think of some ideas around, this is our practice, right? Like what does a subcommittee do? We are thinking about how to engage with the community. What are those actions? So one that's been proposed, as you know, we're gonna have the film screening Alien Boy on the 7th. And so I guess there was a discussion around how to have that sort of follow-up discussion about the movie, about the film, and that dialogue around what we learned. Doesn't really fit in with the night, with the timing, and it's such a heavy movie. So not really wanting to lean right into all of that right afterwards. So one idea, right, could be we bring it, we plan something, maybe in the subcommittee space or full committee space, we plan something to have a follow-up conversation about the film. And maybe it's there where we're bringing in, these different other stakeholders. Maybe this is a time we can talk it. I think there's a slide on that. Maybe I'm going too fast, but yeah. So the event idea would be to host a follow-up event about the screening. And then I think the next slide talks about possible goals for that type of event, right? Like this could be a great opportunity to bring in PPB's, training division and their policy development team and all these really, key contributors to, right? 'Cause the Alien Boy, like that whole case, like it became James Chastity, it all became, right? Like it was part of the steps that got us to where we are today. So it could be a really good place to do some pulse check with PBB around, what have they changed? What have they learned from this whole process of the settlement? I don't know, it could invite some really good conversation. And so that's one idea. Wanted to stop and see what everybody thinks about that. It's like something we could immediately do. I'd love to do a town hall. I don't know if this is the topic, but also another idea is to do a town hall. My idea was, something around like educating the community around the settlement and policing and what PCCEP does, but it probably makes sense to like also do a town hall that's connected to a topic that we want to, right, learn, maybe move forward with a recommendation, maybe not, but learn more information about. So it is, yeah, great. Got some hands up. Cool. Viva, go ahead.
I'd love, this could be a great opportunity to start to get some input from community members that are directly impacted. I'm thinking about more vulnerable people that might not show up at these meetings or be able to even, know about the movie screening, things like that. So I almost wonder if like listening sessions from folks with severe and persistent mental illness, folks that are feeling vulnerable in current day, or just having an idea of what are the current issues facing folks in the community that have frequent contact or vulnerable to that just by maybe being outdoors. So those would be my things, is getting direct input from people currently.
Great. Carrie.
Thanks. I had a couple of thoughts. One was, I think it's it's great to reconnect people to the mission of PCEP, to introduce people to the mission and the origin of PCEP. I'm worried about our capacity to if there's other, like, how do we manage the balance of this event versus something that might feel pressing for us to have a town hall about sooner than putting it off. And my other thought, so I love it, but I'm just not sure about timing, especially if we have a topic we want to discuss like quickly that is pressing. And then my other thought was, I would love to see this be something that, in order for it to be the most productive, I believe that we would need to either do it in a series, which would be time consuming, or do it after we've had like the town halls with each of the districts as a way of introducing people to the idea of getting to know PCEP. And that might not be true, but I would fear doing this event to a small echo chamber audience if we didn't yet first put in the effort to do other events with, for example, our neighborhood associations. To make sure that we're getting new people who want to learn and attend an open house and be involved.
Yeah.
No, I kind of agree. Especially, like they're gonna see the movie and then how far later are we gonna have this open event to do that? Like, is it gonna be a week later, 2 weeks later? I understand the movie is traumatic, so having something like that afterwards might not be possible, but also maybe it might be, even if it's short. I know it was said they don't want to do a Q&A. I don't remember exactly where I heard that. That might have been from us, like, or maybe I saw it on the flyer, but yeah, that is something to think about, the timing of it and energy.
Yeah. Leslie.
Sorry, yes, I was just like writing down my thoughts so I wouldn't forget. So I kind of have 3 categories of thoughts. The first one being like the PCEP tie-in. I really like the idea of, using this as like, explanation for why PCEP exists and the settlement agreement and those types of things. So definitely having that. I know we usually have sign-up sheets at the event so that people can join our mailing list and learn about the meetings. I was thinking also it would be great to have some sort of box for questions for the committee. But maybe we could do it virtual. Like, I know some people like, if we hand out cards at the very beginning with like space and like contact information, we can work our way on getting back. Or maybe it could be a digital thing, like a QR code of like, submit your questions to PCEP. Here's, email and whatnot. But also having some handouts about the settlement agreement, or maybe some like FAQ quick facts that we can share, like one sheet. And then the next category is around resources and education. I agree with the fact that this can be a very traumatic event. And if you're not part of a committee or part of like some community aid or action group, you can feel like, what can I do? Like, you can feel very overwhelmed. So it may be good to have some sort of like, what can you do type of thing, whether that be handing out like PSR cards or something like that. Like, hey, if you see somebody experiencing a mental health crisis, this is what you can do. Call this organization. Or I'm sure MHA has maybe some handouts that they could bring about, bystander like best practices. And again, just kind of helping people feel like they have an actionable thing and they didn't just come to learn about a thing that they can't do really much about. And that could also overcome the time lag from if we decide to have a follow-up event, because in the meantime, they have some actionable next steps. The last thing is about like a follow-up event. I really like the idea of having some sort of follow-up event that is more hands-on, maybe like training focused. So I know that like for people, it's very difficult to know what to do in a situation, even if they have something in their head without like practicing. So if we have some sort of like hands-on training, if that is possible, it would be really nice to provide people like that opportunity. And that is my drive-by of ideas. Thank you.
And are you saying that those ideas would work specifically for like the Alien Boy follow-up, or okay?
Because I think the whole point of this. Sorry, go ahead. Did you?
No, you go ahead. No, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, this was like the event, right, that kicked off the settlement agreement, and it's just like all of the things. And I think especially now, we see a lot of people often having mental health crises on the street. We don't know what to do. Like most community members don't really know what to do. So I think there's like a very actionable tie-in to like educate people about this very serious situation that is happening still actively.
Yeah.
And what they can do to be part of the solution, right? Like, I think one of the things that we've started to lean into as a community in the last like few months is like people have been so fed up, compassion fatigue and all of that, that they're leaning into criminalization solutions. And I personally think that there's like better solutions out there than that. So I think providing people with tools and hope is very important.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Adelia, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess like I just watched the film for the first time, and like just to prepare for the event. And I think it's like essentially like it's gonna leave everyone like very, very mad at like what the police did. And I don't know if like providing or talking about like mental health or like being in a crisis is necessarily like the right. I think that's an important aspect to this, but I think a lot of this is about like police misuse of force, lying and investigations, and like union protection. And so I think, and that's what's really highlighted from like what I got from the film. And so I think like at a lot of our events where things are really hard, they're like, why isn't PPB here? I want to say something to them. I have questions for them. And I think, and I want to say stuff to them too, based on watching it. And so I think like I personally would be interested in having like a specific follow-up event with maybe like Aaron Schmautz to talk about the union, and with other folks. I think it would be, again, like this isn't a Michi training, so it's not necessarily like something we just signed up to like do a lot more on, but at the same time, like I guess I think this is like very, very directly related to like misuse of force investigations, and like one of the officers involved is still doing like police adjacent work, so there's just like a lot of stuff that's really, really crucial and timely. And I think like for me, I feel like we need to make that direct connection and that direct way for communities to like say their piece and ask those hard questions. So that's kind of where I'm at. I also just watched it earlier today, if you can't tell, which is why I'm very like, I have strong feelings about this, but yeah.
No, it's a good points. Yep, hard clip. Yeah. Dory.
Yeah, so so PCEP is I guess sort of co-hosting this event. It is a required amici training. It's so Mental Health Alliance provides a training to PCEP every year, and this is what they wanted to do this year, which I think is a great idea given the points that were made about the origins of the settlement and that and all of that. But I think basically some of the discussions I had with the co-chairs and with MHA about the after program, a lot of times PCEP will try to bring in other perspectives about these difficult issues or just to share information and provide more context. And in thinking about that, it was just sort of like how to honor this extremely traumatic subject matter, and combining those things didn't seem quite right. So yeah, I think you all brought up some really good ideas. I think there's the side of it where it's like learning more info from PPB, whatever that might look like. I also thought what Viva suggested was a great idea, like checking in like today with like the mental health community or people living with severe persistent mental illness and having some sort of listening session with that community could also be a really great direction to take a follow-up. Yeah, so just pointing out things that I heard, I think you should consider maybe. Oh, one last thing. I think it's quite possible this film screening will be very well attended, which is another reason you might want to think about a follow-up or some way that you're communicating like these are ways you can learn more, like this is work we're going to do around this in the future or something we're having soon, where you can stay engaged with this. The capacity is 200 people.
I was going to ask Dory too, what is Amiki doing afterwards for this event? Like, is there some type of speaker or something? I know they're not going to do like a Q&A from my understanding, but what are they doing afterwards?
We're still working that out with them, but there will be some sort of after program, but it won't really be like as free form as PCEP often does things.
And then will they have any resources there available, being it is obviously very emotional and traumatic and triggering?
We're still planning the event, so I think I'll be able to answer those questions for you later.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but I do think, Noelle, like when talking about the event and sharing it just in our spaces and with our communities, like giving that big trigger warning as much as possible, because we're not sure what we'll be able to do. And afterwards, like there's only 30 minutes after the movie. We didn't have, so it's gonna be like short. And that's why we were hesitant to have like a panel or a Q&A, just because it doesn't feel like that's enough time to dedicate, and then it would feel almost like worse, in my opinion, to not give it the time it needs. So we're just like trying to figure out a few folks who can say something, but yeah, making sure that folks are aware of how rough it is.
Well, did you have your hand up still?
No, sorry, I still just left it up, but let me read this comment. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, you like was brought up the point of like a emotional first aid or peer support or something like that after the event, being it is so triggering. Just some type of way we can offer support or possibility to like digest everything.
Well, would it make sense then to like say, well, okay, here's the question. Here's like, so I was gonna say out loud, would it make sense to go ahead and plan our next subcommittee meeting for this like debrief time? But does this proposal that's in front of us right now, what it could potentially look like, that follow-up, would that be better placed in a full PCCEP committee meeting? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd love for us to like, this sounds like people, we agree this would be a needed thing. There's, you know, I talk about the details, but you know, thinking of like just planning it so that we can put it on the calendar so that we can talk about it at the screening and promote it in that way. But yeah, just I mean, I'd like to move forward, but I don't know if that belongs in the subcommittee space as far as that like agenda or in the full committee.
My understanding was that it would potentially, I don't know about the timing, but potentially take the form of a separate event, not a PCCEP meeting like this.
Like a panel or something, you mean, Dory? Like a bigger.
That's what I think you had shared with me when we
That's
last
true.
talked
I
about
did
it.
say that. Yeah, like a bigger. Yeah, not necessarily like a town hall, but something, and it could be on Zoom still, but it wouldn't. I think it would be something we would advertise a little bit more. I don't know, but I don't know if it could go in full committee or this committee. I don't know what you guys think.
I'm not so hung up on what committee it goes on, and I do love the idea, and I do understand why it'd be important to follow up the April 7th screening in a timely way with an opportunity. I just think that the doing a big event shortly after April 7th might be a big challenge for us. And doing the big event, like having a conversation after April 7th is important. So I think we should schedule time for that somehow. And then being able to announce it at the screening would get us a lot more involvement from new people anyway, if 200 people will be there. Yeah, I'm a little wary of trying to make it the event where we try to accomplish everything versus just debrief from the screening and then hold a bigger sort of open house event down the road.
Leslie?
Yeah, I'm struggling because I really like Noelle's idea about sticking around to debrief or just kind of like provide some emotional, you know, kind of support like right after. I just think that like the debrief is great for folks to like digest and like think about their thoughts and you know kind of like consider how they want to move forward and stuff like that. So having that a little bit later makes sense. But there are going to be some really raw emotions like right after. And I think people need to, you know, for lack of a better word, like vent and things like that, and providing a space for that. Even though I was looking at the time, the event technically ends at 9, which is late. But I don't want to send people home and like be like, all right, cool, like we're out. Deal with your feelings that are very overwhelming because it's a very triggering movie. I don't know. I feel like we would be doing a disservice to where people are emotionally after something like that. Maybe it doesn't have to be anything formal, but like maybe, you know, if folks want to stick around and talk, we can talk to Clint Beer about like just extending that space a little bit. Because yeah, I do think people are gonna be very and maybe people are gonna come with their friends and they're gonna have their own debrief afterwards. I know that, you know, often when I attend those things, that's what I do. But yeah, just wanted to, you know, validate that thought.
Yeah, I just want to bring up what Dory said in the chat. We can't do anything. Like this isn't, we can't add anything. This isn't our event. So hopefully MHA is thinking, so Dory, as you talk to them about the event, I know just like that they are aware that there could be this need.
Yeah.
For some,
I think that's the important thing. Like we want to acknowledge that we can't leave people hanging emotionally, and like there's going to be some like really triggering things, and I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, to add on, I think like they also have facilitated or like showed this film screening a lot of times, and have spoken to like their experience and what they've seen afterwards and the questions people ask. So like this is something that they have done many times, like internationally, I think is what one of them said. But yeah, I agree. Like it sucks, like putting someone into like, come watch this film. It's gonna make you really fucking upset. Like, bye. And yeah, so that's why I think we need to like, which we are doing, we're communicating that it's a hard thing to watch. And I think having that setup of like, you can talk about this more at this time with us. We don't want to like let this go, is like makes that feel better for me. I think it's really hard when you have to let people experience like and watch or like witness really shitty things. And like I don't know really what the alternative would be besides like not. I don't know. Yeah, it just kind of sucks basically.
It does suck. And that's what I'm saying. Like, what if our next, so I'm just gonna put it out there, like nobody, there's not like, we don't care about where it goes. Like the next subcommittee meeting would host this panel with PBB and, whoever we think else could be in the room to answer questions so that we could offer that as afterwards, like, no, go and take care of yourself. Let's continue this conversation. PCEP is, providing this space for bringing so-and-so so that there is a space like, okay, I can go calm down, I can go do my thing, and then I can come back. And I agree. I think it'd be really hard to do something big like a panel or another town hall. I think we could, I think we should do it as a Zoom meeting. It might be easier to get these guests. So that's kind of a question for staff of like, I'm imagining our next meeting would be April 16th. So like, could we get, folks from PBB to be available for this discussion? And then, maybe from there in that space, we decide, oh, this actually needs to be a bigger conversation. And maybe it's like, from there, it's like a town hall-esque type event, but throwing that out there as an idea. Yeah, Carrie, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to answer Adelia's question that she posed in the chat about what I'm wary about. Similar to what Ashley just said, I wanna make sure that we provide the community an opportunity to exchange conversation with PPB and the other relevant parties after the film, because I feel like that's a role we should play. But if we're looking to do an open house, then maybe it needs to be in person. And I don't know that we're ready for that. If the city can jump, if we could make that happen. So I guess scale and focus is what I'm wary of.
Yeah, like I think there's an importance to have something, a space for people to talk out and then have people be there for some questions versus this big event, large scale thing. Yeah.
Or if we did the big event, then, just making sure that we have the bandwidth to make it happen, because, if it's a great opportunity to capture an audience that's engaged that we don't normally reach. But how we talk to them about what we're doing, and how we deliver it, we just need to make sure we're prepared to toe the road.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to pose this to Dory then of like staff capacity of you and Liz. Do you think this is doable, or like what kind of event is yeah, possible.
Well, it just depends on obviously what else you all, what the other work you give to us. But we can, I mean, you know, like the next week wouldn't be ideal. But a couple weeks later, we could definitely have another event. So yeah, that's what I'll say. I also put something in the chat summarizing what I am hearing, for your consideration.
Dory, I didn't read your chat yet, but I was going to ask similar questions. Basically, what can we do after the thing? Like, are we able to just, I know we're not planning on doing like a panel or anything afterwards. I'm just asking, can we leave materials there, or is there something like that, like a way to invite people to the next event or provide material about what PCEP is? I'm just wondering what our limitations are. What can we do?
The really big limitation with the Clinton Theater is, of course, there's the tone that's been discussed. The really big limitation is time. We don't have a ton of time after the film. As far as providing literature and things like that, yes, absolutely, that is completely feasible.
That's what I was thinking. I'm not thinking of like taking up any time, especially since we're not actually hosting this, but just providing some literature or material up front, anything that we can, as well as even like making sure like Portland Street response material. I'm sure Amiki will be able to provide that themselves, or that's something they're already planning on doing. But that would be a great way to invite for our next event.
For sure.
It-
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. It doesn't even have to be for our next event, but just for any future PCEP event or anything to learn more about PCEP.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it should be, yep, that's always an important thing to do. And I think that there's a good chance a lot of people will be at this event. And I don't want to, I think I may have misspoken. PCEP is absolutely co-hosting this event. It's just a little different because it's an Amiki training. So it's not like quite the same as how we would engage with planning the agenda of a different style of community engagement event. Go ahead, Carrie.
Two thoughts. One, I think MHA probably is well prepared to provide a plan for counseling. So maybe we don't need to worry too much about that as long as we know what they're doing, you know, for the people after the film. I would think of the two of us, they would be well prepared. And the other one is the film is available by Tubi. And I wondered if we were going to mention that as an alternative, like we want everybody to come in person, but will we also talk about watching the film on Tubi in preparation for our follow-up meeting? Or do we need to be concerned about audiences or something if we do?
I feel like we could definitely share that in like emails or like, especially before this like second event we have, we can say like, if you have a library card, you can watch it here, an account. Yeah, I think that would be great. So folks have that.
So yeah, great conversation. So just looking at Dory's suggestion, did you just send that again? Yeah. Okay. It's like, wait,
I was wondering when the next steering committee meeting was going to happen, and maybe the steering committee can look at when this would be best to schedule. Just an idea.
Sure.
I expect that, so we're trying to do them on a quarterly basis, so every 3 months. So I expect the first one will be for the second quarter. So either April or May. The reason I think you might want to think about offering some sort of follow-up, whether it's a series or whatever, is because I do think we know people if a lot of people come in and watch this film, they will have a feeling of wanting to engage, wanting to know more. And being able to share something in that moment might be a good idea. So it's up to you, but it is something you should consider.
Do you think an online event or offline event would be better?
I would suggest in person, given the content.
And you think it would be possible from like the staff and resource point of view to pull it together?
Honestly, Liz and I have, we've been really in the weeds with the process stuff with you all and the government transition, but I think we're excited about getting some content stuff booked. I mean, I'm desperate to help work on some of that with you all. I think maybe everyone would enjoy that. So it wouldn't be a problem for us because there's not too much else going on yet. We're just getting started.
I just last comment on this from me. I do think that the town hall we did for PSR was so impactful in so many ways, brought together, government and community and all the sides of the party. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, PSR was recently granted permission to enter buildings, which was part of our recommendation. So I'm definitely think the in-person events have a ripple effect. Yeah.
Go ahead, Tia.
I was just going to say, if there's not time to do an actual debrief, right after the film at the site, then I feel like I would want a piece of paper to write down all the things I'm feeling right at that moment. I know that I've heard in the past that surveys don't do well, but if there was something like even just a blank piece of paper to write down, please write down all of your feelings, thoughts, or what kind of action you like to do at this time, just so people can get out what they're thinking if we don't have time for in-person debriefing, and then turn those in, and that would be maybe helpful for people.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's easy to do. In that like comment box, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Dalia.
Yeah, I also just want to note that I definitely foresee this bringing up like other instances of police misuse of force and potential like police killing folks, and like what this could bring, and also like that coupled with accountability too, and maybe like the lack of accountability we've seen in like many recent cases too. So that's just like more things that I think will be brought up for people, especially with like stuff going on with the CBPA right now. That like that's I think on a lot of people's minds too. And so it's all just like kind of fits together as well.
Right. And like anytime we have these opportunities where we're in front of the community, like in person, or we have some sort of special like topic, it's always a good place to those are always going to be places where we're going to gather, feedback and information for like that can inform us for like future work. And so maybe that's something as a subcommittee members we need to just we'll be mindful of when we're out in the community, but when we're also hosting these events, to just be listening and like what's being said by the community, so that we can help shape and form what our next steps are, which I think we're all good at. It's just like I don't know, it's like a procedural part that we don't really ever like write down, but I think we're all like really good at that.
I think that's why I liked the idea of the open house for this type of follow-up event in particular, because we could have the panel, but then we could also have stations where people could interact to learn more, where it wasn't one topic suddenly monopolizing the whole meeting. Just a thought. I know we only have a month to think about it, and another committee is not, I don't think we have another committee meeting in between now and then. But when I saw the open house idea, I really thought that's a great way to get people's individual questions and interests addressed, and not have the topic of a whole meeting hijacked by theme that then prevents
Yeah.
things. But I mean, I think our meetings are great. We have them for, they get a lot done and we go deep in themes. But if we're trying to like create an environment where lots of people can learn about the history and what's happening now, the open house idea was one way to do it. I thought that would be very productive.
Yeah. Well, I want to be mindful of time because we want to get input from public. But it sounds like we do want to do something. So we're saying out loud to staff to help us with that in-person that would happen sometime in April. So we can, at the time, that timing that does matter. I think out loud, like we're not gonna be able to have this subcommittee space to do any planning around that discussion. So, does that happen via email a little bit of work group? I think it's like making sure we have the time, but it sounds like we should plan that. Like, I think that feels very appropriate for what we need, like this training, and it's a good topic to bring out, and it's hard because that, that the reasons we all talked about, just like, making sure that we're not just like letting people go out in the world when they've seen this in, this film, but then also how do we tie it to like what the work PCCEP's doing and why we're here, to give people that like thing to grasp onto of after seeing a pretty heavy film. Leslie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I would volunteer for that work group. I think we've learned work groups are really effective in moving things forward, so I'd be happy to be a part of that.
And I'll say this out loud too, like, so that would be a work group for this smaller in-person debrief of the film. And then we still have the bigger idea, or, a bigger town hall. And maybe, that's where we do that open house concept. We lean into that more. And, maybe things will come up from there, right? Like there's a lot could happen. And so maybe there's a topic that would be assigned to that town hall. Attilia?
Yeah, I also would love to be a part of that. That's all.
Me too.
Carrie? Okay, Carrie. Attilia.
No, I think this is great. We are kind of tying this up almost at the perfect time. We have a plan. We have forward with it. Oops. So this is great.
Yeah, same. So we'll do a little work group. We'll work with city staff to figure out the date, and yeah, I think that sounds solid.
One quick question, because
Yeah.
I had to step away. I'm assuming you didn't magically resolve the concept of the event in the 1 minute while I was away. But so the agreement was to kind of have sort of a debrief meeting in one of the meetings following the event of some sort, and then a little later, soon though, a larger. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Just want to make sure.
And we'll do a work
And
group to talk about the content for that follow-up meeting.
yeah, and the shape of what exactly the event would be still TBD.
You're correct. Yep.
Yeah,
But
we can also really push for the open public comment stuff at the end of the event. Folks to send an email or something, just so like we will be seeing everything that they say too, to see that feedback if they're not gonna make it or anything.
Yeah, maybe have QR codes with that. Yeah.
yeah, you could pose that follow-up meeting as like, we know this might have like raised a lot of questions or like discussion ideas for you. Like we're offering that space a week later at this time or something like that. And
it would be nice.
inviting relevant people. Yeah.
Yeah. If we could figure out the date and get that so that we can offer it at the film, I think that would be really helpful. I think that'd be good. Cool. Well, good job, everyone. We got some work done, got some plans. I think it's a good product. So yeah, I think we're at public comment time. Really looking forward to this. So yeah, great. Got some hands up, hey. Barbara, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, well, it sounds like you're getting all organized. And are going pretty in depth with that Alien Boy movie, which I haven't watched yet, despite having had the DVD for several years because it was so scary. So I appreciate you taking that on. But as far as the police engagement with the community, I really feel like that needs to happen, not like when the police decide to go to do something or go someplace, but like maybe you all can bridge this, is finding out from the community what would make them feel the most comfortable. And it might be different for different people, right? To communicate with police. And so I think it needs to be, and then it wouldn't be the intent versus the outcome. So, and the other thing is I was at the town hall that Councilor Canal had, and I found the police presence rather intimidating, even though I'm not particularly a target of the police. And two women who came from communities who did speak up about it quite strongly. One of them felt like she got misinformation about PSR because she had wanted to call them for a neighbor that had a mental health problem, and also brought up the issue of why were they being paid to be there in their gear, and the fact that there were guns in a community space. And then someone else brought up, a different speaker entirely, brought up the history of the police and how it started with slavery, basically, and that she talked about some of the abuse she had experienced, and she said she knows a few of the times maybe she did need to be stopped, but not all the times. And why did she need to be shoved against a wall or against a car or that kind of thing? So I think it's really important that they not just show up, because I think the purpose of these town halls that the counselors have and some other meetings should be so that they can hear from community members that don't necessarily feel comfortable coming to city council meetings. So anyway, so thank you for your work.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you. And agree. Yeah, anyone else from the community? Okay. Well, looks like we've done the work. Good job, everyone. 5 minutes to spare. Wow, let's record that. That's a good one. That's a good meeting. No, but no, we had some good discussion, good dialogue. We got through process conversation. I think we have a good something good to submit to the full committee for approval, and yeah, keep us all accountable about the lanes, and just being mindful that we can be flexible with this. We can move forward with our, these core tasks, but then we can also, review them and amend as we need. And then we'll have the steering committee kind of keep us also on track. So what's up next? Yeah, as you know, full committee meeting, not next week, but the week after, March 26th from 6 to 8:30. It'll be online. I'm assuming, yes.
Yeah.
Via Zoom. Yeah. And then as always, you can always write as public comment. We all get all those members get a copy of that. And yeah, sign up for updates so you can get that information about upcoming events and be the first to know and share with your friends. All right. Well, if everyone
I
else-
just wanted to take a moment to say thank you, Ashley, for really taking the lead on all of this. And thank you everyone for being here and being flexible and being an active listener, as well as engaging with us.
So I also want to acknowledge, thank you, Noelle, because I think I was a co-chair full committee by myself for so long, and so just like, oh, I'm the one who has to talk. So Noelle, thank you for walking, just being so graceful and kind, and I know we'll continue to figure out our groove. So yeah.
We'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right, great meeting you guys. Glad to see this new co-chair team in action and great work from our new subcommittee members. Yeah, we will see you soon at our full committee meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, Afrida.
Yeah.